Welcome to the Alchemy of Business Show with your host, Steve Rodgers. The Alchemy of Business Show is a podcast that mixes practical, actionable business solutions with soulful insights for anyone seeking deeper meaning in their lives and greater success in their work. Steve will be featuring purpose-driven leaders from all walks of life and getting insight into their journeys from failures to triumphs. So tune in to transition, transform, and evolve in every dimension of your business and life. And now your host of the Alchemy of Business Show, Steve Rodgers.
Hello, and thank you for listening in or viewing in on the Alchemy of Business Show. We appreciate you being here. We are always talking about making wiser decisions, creating more profits in your life and more abundance, and creating higher purpose. And the guest that we have today is a phenomenal example of many of these things. I met Eric many, many years ago from one of my mentors that we're going to talk about, but he has been running a very thriving and growing and evolving business. He's the founder and CEO of Brandetize. His name is Mr. Eric Berman. He's an angel investor. He's also a culture builder, which we're going to learn more about. He's been doing this for over 25 plus years, and he has a passion for helping scale businesses and companies. He does this with all types of entrepreneurs, companies, different products. What Eric has done is really learned to take the secret sauce and the magic of how to market, but more importantly, brand and then monetize what it is you're doing, thus the name Brandetize. And so he's the CEO and founder of this full service performance-based marketing company. It's based in San Diego. And the mission at Brandetize is to leave a positive impact on the world by elevating authentic brands to their full potential. So right in alignment with the Alchemy of Business Show. So let's welcome Mr. Eric Berman to the show. Thanks, Eric, for being on.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve. Good to see you today.
Great to see you. Well, you know, we're going to be talking about business and stuff today, but I've got to ask you, I've only been able to see pictures of your new little birth baby in the world via Instagram or some photos, but you went from, in the last couple of years, having a major life change where you married your love. You went from being now a husband, a father, and a family man. So can we talk a little bit about your personal side of business? How has your change dynamics affected your life, and how are you doing being a dad and a husband?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot's obviously happened in the last few years. I like to joke around that my midlife crisis, being just turning 50, believe it or not, I went the opposite route of a lot of people. Waited and took my time, and very happily was ready and focused and found the woman, most amazing woman, and so excited to have her in my life and gotten married, and we were very totally just couldn't wait to have a child, and I was ready for it. And baby Andrina just turned 1 year old last week, and it's been just life changing. You hear so many stories about it's going to change your life, and you hear it all and you sort of take it in, but until you actually have your little child, it's incredible. And I think what's unique from my perspective, how it changes business and all that, in life, I mean, it certainly gives me another appreciation of being able to work so hard for something. You work hard as an entrepreneur. You're used to working the 10-hour days kind of consistently, and now there's a greater purpose for the work I'm doing, and it is for my wife, my baby, and future family, and hopefully one other child in the future. And funny story I have to share anyway on that, by the way, because everybody asked me about the name. And
I was going to ask the same thing, so I'm glad you led right into that.
It's a good story. That my wife's name is Ariel. Okay, and me being Eric, what reference does that give you? That's my quiz to you.
Yes, that's it's one of the Disney shows, and I should know this because what's that? One of the Disney movies, right?
Little Mermaid.
Little Mermaid. Thank you. I was going to Pocahontas, and I knew that was wrong.
Yeah. So Ariel, met her Prince Eric, or Prince Eric met his Ariel, right. And we decided we had to look at Little Mermaid references, and Andrina is actually the baby, one of the sister mermaids of Ariel. So it was a cool rare name, and we kind of fell in love with it, and of course fell in love with our baby. And the other thing I was going to say, sorry, what were you going to say?
Oh, I love that, and I love when the name of the meanings that you pick for, because they're going to have that name for their lifetime. So totally. Obviously she'll know that you put a lot of thought, and I'm sure she's going to love it as she starts even getting more articulate in what her name is and who she is. So that's great. You're going to tell us more of the story. Go ahead.
Well, the other thing, it's interesting, you think about having a child right now. Let's talk about having a child during COVID, and so many changes going on. And I know we're going to dig into culture and all the other things. And I could go on for a while about, going from in office with a high culture to all of a sudden working with a remote team and how that changes things. But um, as much as I wish I was back in office with team for a variety of reasons, the one blessing I have without that is being able to spend more hours with Andrina, and that never would have happened without COVID. So, on one hand, I'm frustrated about the situation, how it affects the company and the business, and there's ways to obviously make everything go okay with that. But I mean, I get this amazing opportunity to spend more time with my wife and Andrina, so it's really cool.
Well, that is wonderful. I mean, those years, and you don't get them back. I mean, I remember my daughter being 1 and 2, and then her 2 in her first dance class, and get her first date, and now she's married, and I have 2 grandkids from her that are 3 and 5 years old. So there's a whole nother experience, and after that, but it goes so fast, as I'm sure you've heard. And now you're experiencing as a dad. To think that I did not think that she was 1. I was thinking you were going to tell me she was like 6 or 8 months old, because I'm envisioning just watching you on social media and then the photo feeds. I remember the picture that you had on when you proposed to your wife. You guys were like on some cliff somewhere.
Santorini.
Oh, you're in Santorini.
Greece. Yeah.
That looked like an epic. So from that epic picture, and then I went, wow. Then you went right to the dad stuff, and within that year. So I didn't realize she was already a year old though. So you've had amazing couple of years, and like you said, COVID. I mean, the global pandemic has affected so many things in really trauma ways for many people and businesses. And on the flip side, it's done a lot of amazing things of accelerating businesses, of accelerating tech, and bringing families closer together for the good, bad, and the ugly. But if you're a new dad and you get to be working from home and experiencing all the days of that with your wife and your baby, what a blessing. I'm so glad you had that.
I mean, Steve, imagine getting off a long or tough conference call or just hours, and all of a sudden you're like, I got to get up and stretch. Normally in the office, you walk around, you probably get interrupted. But being able to walk over and pick up your little baby and just see her smile, I mean, that's all the energy you need for the day. I mean, it's just such a cool opportunity.
I love that. Well, one of the missions at Brandetize is to leave a positive impact on the world by elevating authentic brands to their full potential. How has that sentence become even more impactful? You mentioned that in some of your words you were saying there, and some of the sentences about your baby and about bringing purpose. So has having this experience changed what, even when you made that mission statement? Because to have that part of your mission statement that you're making a positive impact in the world by elevating authentic brands, just those words alone, have you decided that that's shifting what kind of brands you're going to take on? Has that shifted the depth of how you're going to do this? I'm just curious on how being a dad has affected you being an entrepreneur and a businessman and a CEO.
I mean, I think you're always, what's happened is you continue to really dig into that and think about your future and how important that mission really is, and how we really want to, how precious time is. And you want to work with people, friends, partners, clients that are doing good in the world. When you have a choice to make, let's go out there and do things that leave a positive impact, because again, it's not just an impact for others, but this truly could trickle down into my family here, amongst everybody else. So yeah, it's definitely added a little bit more to it.
That's awesome. Well, in getting your starts, you had some early on in the marketing space. I'm curious on how you even got involved in the marketing genre anyway at the beginning in your late teens, early 20s. And then you ended up connecting with, when I met you many years ago, I'm pretty sure it was when you were working, I don't remember exactly what the role was, but I remember you were running much or all of the marketing for Brian Tracy, who I had on the show just a few weeks ago. And he's been a friend and mentor of mine for many years. And if I remember correctly, your skills of being a marketer led you to going with Brian. And then that left from there into a whole nother thing, which is blown up even way beyond that. So I'm curious about how you got your start in the marketing industry, and then how you connected with the Brian. And then let's talk about the evolution of Brandetize.
Yeah, and it's quite a story. So after finishing UCSD, I had this sense of not wanting to go run into that corporate job. You get recruited everywhere. I was a marketing major, and I had a friend who was starting this thing, and I was the first person that sat down and said, "Hey, I have this idea. We want to do these things, and we're going to change the world by doing this stuff in the college market. And the college students are the most coveted demographic to the marketers, and blah blah blah." And I'm like, sounds cool. Where do I sit? And that led to, like, in hindsight, I didn't realize I was an entrepreneur or a marketer. I didn't, I just knew went to college. I was a hustler and I wanted to make things happen. And over the course of years, you look back and understand that. So that led to me working for no salary for 18 months and learning all the world about equity. And my parents thought I was crazy after finishing college. And no salary, and building and bootstrapping a company that went from 3 employees into 7 years later, 400 employees, having raised almost $100 million. And I thought I was going to be retired at 28. I don't even know if you know this story, Steve. So I thought I was going to be retired at 28. And we were the actual first Facebook of all Facebooks, company called collegeclub.com. It was the first social media. We were doing social media before anybody else was doing stuff. Through that incredible journey, I was taking on every role probably except for building out tech, but, sales, biz dev, marketing, just operations, running a business, hiring, firing, culture. And that's where I learned a lot. And that's also where I met one of my mentors via CD and audio cassette named Brian Tracy. So, and that was really my first time. And I'm going to go back later, talk about what I'd love to give back on is I was when you learn the kind of stuff that Brian teaches, and we were listening to Brian and Tony Robbins, it's like, why don't they teach you that in high school or college?
Yeah,
like none of that stuff's taught. The mindset, all the skills, the goal setting, time management. You wish you did that. So I'm getting ahead of probably you're asking me, but I wish at some point that would be my legacy, to be able to try to help reteach the whole educational process for that stuff. We can come back to that, but through that experience, and I'll try to fast forward fast forward to the end of that journey. We were about to go public. We took our first vacation in 5 years. This is now the year 2000. On paper, I would have been, well over $10 million with my equity. And I was just like, wow, what a ride. And this is after working 7 days a week, having no life from 21 to 28. We were in Punta Cana, Playa del Carmen. I'll never forget this, on a rainy day. And all of a sudden the market crashed that Thursday. And our CFO was with us, almost had a heart attack on the spot, flew home. We had a $10 million bridge that Tuesday to take us to the IPO. And the market's all dried up. And they said, hold on, we got to wait to give you your money. Well, what do you mean you got to wait? We got payroll.
Oh my God.
So from what opportunity I thought that I was going to be done, turned into losing everything as far as the stock and the whole company and all that in a downturn, as you learn a lot about board seats and shareholders and all sorts of things, and how you think when you think nothing's going to go wrong, how things can go wrong, and how to prepare for this. And again, I could go on for a while and stories learned there, but so I'm trying to get to your question, but there's a backstory. So that ended in an interesting way. And then I became a consultant, and I was doing a lot of consulting, and I found out through a family friend that Brian Tracy needs a website, needs to understand what's going on this internet thing. I said, the Brian Tracy, are you kidding me? He lives in San Diego. What? So I was able to get a meeting with him, and I kind of walk into the door half drooling that I'm in front of Brian Tracy with my mouth agape, like, oh my God, shaking. And then we sat down. I said, Brian, I know what you need. I could do it. Let's do this together. But Brian, I'm an entrepreneur. I love you, but I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm also a risk taker. I understand. I'm confident in my ability to perform. So how about we do this together? And I'll only make money for myself when you make money. And he said, Eric, you're my kind of guy. Let's do this. And here we are, 21 years later, with an incredible relationship. And that was my initial foray into building. People would say, how do you run an agency? Well, that was my first foray, where I started actually as a consultant to Brian with internet marketing and built a team around them, which led 13 years plus years later into, hey, what you do for Brian, can you do for me? Says guys like Jack Canfield and others, and then thus Brandetize was ultimately formed.
Yeah, you do it with some amazing people, amazing brands. And we're going to come back from the break because we have to take a break now, but I want to hear more about that story of, for any of you that can relate to this, that are listening in or maybe viewing, where you've gotten something to the pinnacle and you've worked year after year and tirelessly for it, and then the universe gives you a brick upside the head moment. How do you adjust from that? So Eric was sharing with us about, possibly being able to retire when he was in his late 20s, but the knowledge and wisdom I'm sure he took from that is being relaunched in a different way. But we're going to come back and hear more from Eric Berman of Brandetize about overcoming challenges, creating success. Also, this internet marketing thing, I guess it did actually work and took off, didn't it? So we're going to learn more about not only internet marketing, but digital marketing. And I want to learn out from Eric as well, how marketing has changed in the previous years on, if you're a business owner, where should you be marketing and advertising yourself? So much we're going to unpack in the next segments. Come back and join us on the Alchemy of Business show with Mr. Eric Berman. We'll be back in just a few moments. Hello and welcome back to the Alchemy of Business show. We are talking with Mr. Eric Berman of Brandetize. Eric is a master marketer, and not only is he a master at brands, but he helps understand within his own experiences of building companies, how do you monetize your brand? How do you monetize your advertising? But he's learned that through a couple of bruises and bumps along the way. Eric, before the segment, we were talking about how you were before Facebook, and you and your group of associates, friends, and your entrepreneur fellow workers brought this company to a point you were telling us about. Then that didn't go exactly as planned. My guess is there is more than college years worth of knowledge in that experience.
Oh
But then
yeah.
you went on to meet Brian Tracy, and you said, "Hey, Brian, I know what I can do." So how did you walk into his office? You said you were kind of in awe because he's a Brian Tracy. For those of you that don't know him, you probably haven't maybe learned a lot about sales yet, because he's a master at it. Brian's been around for many, many years, written over probably 90 books on sales, communications, time management. But when you were walking in his office and you said, "Hey, I'm going to do this on the come," was it because you had been an entrepreneur for 7 or 8 years and you were used to not working for a paycheck, and you believed in yourself, versus saying, "Hey, I should at least get a small retainer and then maybe get some of the upswing"? Or did you walk in knowing that because it was Brian you were going to do that? Or was that already your model back then that you knew was going to be your secret sauce?
Yeah, and I think that was probably early on from being so used to um, learning that the equity side and being able to take it. And obviously, I have to have enough money to be able to survive. At the time, but fortunately, I wasn't. I didn't have such an extravagant lifestyle that I couldn't pull it off. But
Right.
and I also looked at it and understood that this wasn't going to be like a year long to get there. Like there was some diligence to look at and say, okay, we could get this going fairly quickly. He's got a big brand, big name. It shouldn't take that long. So the risk assessment I did do in that situation. But when you look at any opportunity, I still teach this today. I go, if you feel confident in your ability and you want to get in the door or something like that, if you can if you have the ability to do that, it's a great way to, it's hard for somebody to say no to that offering. And so here's somebody that I felt really confident myself in, and I was like so excited to work with. And so I felt that if I could make him an offer he couldn't refuse, then it would turn out well. And sure enough, it did.
Well, putting your money where your mouth is, and I know he's a big fan of yours. Not only is he a fan of yours, but you guys became not only working together, you became business partners. So you were so successful on helping Brian build his online brand. And I think I met Brian probably, God, it's probably almost 20 years ago. And I also, followed him from his books, Focal Point Coaching and Psychology, and all the different things that he's done. I've read so many of them. And I went to one of his workshops on Focal Point Coaching in San Diego. And one of my goals I had was to have him become my personal mentor and coach. And it took me about a year to convince him of that. But I coached with Brian for about 2 years personally. But I remember back then I would go to meet him in his office on Stevens Street over in Solana Beach. And I think that's where I met you. But he always raved about his team. And I knew that when he had a team, he had such high expectations of people. He had such high standards of himself. And he's such a worker. I mean, he's so driven. And he always had high praise for you. And then when the market shifted and the world started shifting, that maybe even before the COVID stuff, this goes way back, of, do I really need all the brick and mortar? Do I really need to have my business way? So many businesses have gone through this transition and transformation. So when you now helped Brian figure out how to do this online, you said, okay, this is going to work. How did you guys then decide that you were going to turn this into a business model that became a company, besides just doing work for Brian? You said, hey, Brian, I know you're taking some shifts. I'm going to take some shifts, because he was rechanging his office structure. And you said, hey, I got an idea. Or how did that come about when Brandetize got birthed?
Yeah. Well, what happened was frankly, I was a consultant for Brian, and I had full-time staff there that in theory were getting payroll through Brian Tracy, but I was really running the online team, all the division there. As a consultant, I was looking around in various areas at, like, what else am I going to do? I was working fairly long, but it wasn't 100% of my time on Brian. I was looking at other projects. And after about the 10th person comes to me and says, hey, what you do for Brian, can you do for me? And I'm starting to, all of a sudden I look to a couple of my other leaders. I'm like, well, maybe you have to sort of look at the signals that hit you after a period of time. There might be something there. And initially you thought, well, I don't know, I'm loyal to Brian. This is Brian's employees. I can't just take Brian's employees and have them work on Jack Canfield. But I started thinking through it, and really it became a little bit of a conversation over a period of time with Brian, to understand really what his needs were. And he was at a point where, like, his lease was expiring, and does he really want to keep his office around, and did he need an office there, and did he want that burden? And it was just, our relationship was so good, which again, why it's so important to keep these good relationship with your partners, that eventually he just understood it, and it was like, as long as, and I found out his fears was, well, just don't abandon me. As long as you're taking care of my stuff, so I don't have to worry about it. I trust you, Eric. I want you to be successful. And that's why Brian's such an amazing person, is he generally puts everybody else in front of him, and he always take care of others. And so he said, Eric, I trust you, take care of, always take care of me. And it was that easy after we had that conversation. And essentially we just flipped the model on its head. So I took all the staff, and I started doing payroll, and I got an office and moved everybody in the office, and I took in all the liabilities, if you will. And he got off his plate. So he was happy there too.
And then your revenue model was still basically doing when you walked in the door for Brian of, hey, I'm going to take an opportunity here to put my money where my mouth is, and then help brands better monetize themselves by maximizing online presence on what you can, A, improve your brand, B, how can you scale products that you already have that can become digital sales, or increasing presence on social media. So did that immediately lead to then start working with Jack Canfield and some of the other thought leaders and trainers in the space that you've met or worked with many of them, if not all of them in some capacity? Because I know you run in those circles, and you have a lot of people listening in here have obviously heard of Jack Canfield and read his work, or Chicken Soup for the Soul or Brian. So how, when you were elevating yourself through these channels, it's one thing for someone to say, hey, I want you to do for me, did with Brian, but how do you then keep these name brand people and prove that you're still worth your weight and your team? You obviously were successful in doing it. So I'm just curious on how you had to fine tune your own model and what you were doing that was working so well for them.
Yeah, I mean, once we decided, okay, we're now an agency, you're backdooring an agency, and every agency owner you talk to, you sort of, it's always a funny story. Like, people don't necessarily grow up saying, hey, I want to be an agency owner. You tend to back into it somehow. And this was our story. I think it was, okay, now that we're this thing, what do we really want to be when you grow up? And a lot of it was my entrepreneurial, let's just go out there and I'm a quick start and just fire off and start doing things. And we made a lot of mistakes. And I think that's what's important, is you have to just, you take action, and then you pull back and say, what am I doing wrong, as you continue to grow the business. And one of the biggest things we learned, it was the same way we got in the door with Brian. We certainly leveraged that to get some big names like Jack, like Phil Town, and a few others. But then when you started unraveling the model, we realized that we weren't operating the business, as profitably as we could. And we were making some mistakes with maybe some less established names and brands too, that also wanted the same kind of relationship. And so we learned over time that this idea of, hey, let's just offer to do all these things for clients and scale them and make money on the back end, it wasn't always that simple. Brian really was a diamond in the rough under that, and so was a Jack and somebody else. And you realize when we deal with others, it's not that easy. So over time, we had to unravel that model and make pivots. And that's what all good entrepreneurs do, is they say, okay, well, let's test assumptions out. And you have to be open to understand what you think is right may not always be this case. Just because it worked for one or two, it doesn't always work. But you got to quickly be able to adapt. And that's what happened over time, where now we've continued to evolve more thought leaders and attract them based on the work we've done. So I'm kind of answering a few questions here. One is, continue to go out there and help successfully build these clients and showcase the kind of revenue and the case studies of what we're doing. It will attract others that also want to be like them. But as far as our business model, it's had to evolve as well, where we've now pivoted to more of a let's date before we get married model, meaning
Right.
Let's get to know each other. Let's make sure we like each other, because that certainly is a big impact with a lot of people. And no offense to some listeners, but there are people out there, and there's definitely the ego side sometimes when you deal with people, and they want to do things their way, and they're not responsive, and things. On one hand, they want these amazing results. On the other hand, they're not doing what's needed in order to get the results because their egos get in the way.
Right.
And you learn how quickly that this is, and then all of a sudden when they're ready to chat, they're like, I need this, and this now. And they're like, okay, this may not be the kind of person we want to work with. So you learn those things. And really the biggest variable I think we've learned along the way is at what level stages, companies are at various stages when they approach you as an agency. And the earlier they are in their stage, the more we have to be upfront with people and really paint the picture of what it truly takes to get to that next level. And there's going to be a lot of investing of time and capital. And rather than me chasing dollars, it's a lot easier for me to not take on a client and be real with them before I even get the account, to say, here's what it truly takes to get to the higher level. And once you do get there and we have some success, fantastic. Let's partner and get married at a deeper level.
Got it. Well, and especially since you took so long to date and get engaged, get married, you know that in your own personal life that works and worked for you. You might as well have that apply in business. I use that analogy all the time when I'm doing consulting for clients. I'm like, hey, we can do this date, because sometimes I do become on a board seat for companies, or I'll get equity in their company or invest or whatever it might be, or I'll earn it in. But same thing, I say, hey, you got to make sure you like the people you're with. So in your dating experience, making sure you're spending that much time and energy, and then getting engaged or digging a little bit deeper, and you're combining your values and your alignment for common purposes. And then getting the married stages, especially if you're working on the come on the end, then you really are putting your money where your mouth is. Or maybe sometimes joint ventures are happening. I know you've also been an angel investor. I know you've invested in businesses. I know in an indirect or direct way, you're basically a partner in these people's businesses, because if you're driving revenue, you're making money on the top end, and those are some smart business models. We only have about a minute left in this segment, but I want to come back and prompt you for some discussion on how the sausage is made, if you would, of the marketing world. If you think back over the last 10 years of the evolution of, going from print advertising and direct mail into email marketing and social media and SEO and paid online stuff, how has that evolved dramatically or mildly from your view, because you've been in this so long? And has it shifted and changed since the global pandemic? So we're going to come back and prompt you with that thought. And we're also going to come back and talk more. I know you're a fairly good expert on how to build culture to make businesses work, because not only do you build businesses outside, but your company, you've had a very successful fight. I mean, some of your people have been with you for a very long time, and you've continued to build your team. So to you, culture and how to build culture in business is an important element to you. Am I correct in that statement?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Looking forward to digging into that.
Perfect. All right, great. Well, everyone listening in or viewing in, we will be back just in a few minutes with Mr. Eric Berman from Brandetize. But we're going to be talking about what is it? How do you make the sausage these days in the digital media marketing world? And how do you best spend your dollars, and where is it most effective? And has that changed since the global pandemic, or is it exactly what it was? You just have to be more focused. We're going to find out more about that with Eric when we come back. So come back and join us. Thank you. Hello, and thank you for listening back in or viewing back in, however you got here on the Alchemy of Business show. We appreciate it. We look forward to hearing more from our guest, Mr. Eric Berman, who we have on, who's the CEO and founder of Brandetize. We were hearing some fascinating stories before we had signed off, and I forgot a story that I wanted to ask you about on that early social media day before I come back to the topics we were going to cover. But when you were involved in those early days, Eric, of building Facebook before it was a Facebook, and you were going to go to market, and you had this huge crash. You also have a brother who was involved in the social media space in some fashion. Was he involved in that initial company as well, or was he out doing his own thing? Because he went on to do something in the social media space. So your parents must have really thought you both were nuts in the early days, I would guess.
Yeah, crazy two competitive boys beating each other up all day. It turned out to do some interesting things.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he was not with our first company, but I think I actually indirectly inspired him a little bit, because he went down the path of going down into like Coopers and Lybrand, the big accounting firms, and I think he got a little antsy, and then he decided he wanted to try the entrepreneurial journey, and started in this little incubator that got funded. And this idea they had, him and his three partners, turned into another little social media thing you might have heard of called MySpace. So he was one of the four founders of MySpace. We of course have that sibling rivalry where, he got the best of me on that one. I started first, but he ended up with a big hit on that one. And now he gets to run his own VC company and do some other cool things.
Good for him. How old was it when he stepped into it, and when did he exit that? How old was he when he started?
Let's see. He probably would have been, I think it was after I was done at College Club. So yeah, so he probably would have been roughly early 30s for him. Early 30s, and it was an interesting ride there. And that's a different story, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole nother show there. You guys have both in your own ways been investors in different businesses. Have you invested together in different businesses yourselves as brothers?
Yeah, I mean, he's as a VC, he's got some stuff. My favorite deal, of course, is getting in fairly early in SpaceX, and he does a lot of work with them. So yeah,
very cool.
Time to time for sure. Yeah.
Well, let's go back to this path that you decided to be on as your entrepreneur marketing thing, which is interesting because no matter what business you're, I don't care if you're a barbershop, a speaker, SpaceX, or selling groceries, everyone's got to have marketing in some fashion to create leads, to create customers, to create brand. So how have you seen your expertise of when you got out of college, you started learning the ins and outs of marketing? And then in the last 10 years, when you really got your footing on not only running your own companies, but running it for these other brands, how have you seen marketing evolve in the last 10 years? Just kind of highlights of where you think maybe some significant changes were in marketing. And that same question then boiled down in the last 2 years. Has any of that changed or shifted or diminished or accelerated because of the global pandemic and the way the world is interacting these days?
Yeah, I mean, great questions. I think there's really the answer is both. I mean, I think in general, there's fundamentals that apply no matter where we're at. I mean, there's certain fundamentals about understanding the customer avatar, who are they, where they need to be, what their interests are, their emotions, feelings, something of that nature, what gets them to move, to take action. There's fundamentals there, but certainly, I mean, it's evolved like tremendously, and it continues to evolve at a very quick rate. I mean, I just think back to even Brian Tracy and us watching the data, and data is so important in marketing, and it's even getting bigger and bigger. The data world is just phenomenal. The amount of data we're collecting and how to make marketing decisions on that. But I mean, just basic, simple data was, wow, people aren't buying CDs anymore and cassettes. We get all this inventory, Brian. People are doing these things called MP3s. We better start, evolving and starting to sell those. And then all of a sudden you have to build a way for people to consume MP3s in a customer, user-friendly format. So, I'm taking this back a while now, but, and even today's market, you think, okay, recently pandemic, all sorts of evolutions from attention spans. We're all fighting for attention. And, how do you get somebody's attention in, 1 second, 5 seconds? How do we have content out there for 1 second? Which is why YouTube continues to be tremendous and, such a great search engine, if you will. And while people are, we were always pushing content marketing, because content marketing, I mean, the great stuff you're doing, just getting out there, it's not easy. I mean, it's a lot of work to do these podcasts, and it's not going to happen overnight. You certainly understand this is a long walk, a long journey to get there, but ultimately doing things like that is ultimately going to get ahead in marketing, because people are consuming when they want and how they want and at what speed they want, what medium they want. And our ability to constantly get there is important now. Now COVID. I mean, I'll give you an example of our client. One of my top clients, a guy named Phil Town. He teaches something called Rule 1 Investing, and our business has primarily been, hey, let's send and that's really teaches value-based Warren Buffett style investing for people so they can understand how to do that on their own. And we were sending about.
He is phenomenal. I've seen him at a few of your events, and for anybody who hasn't followed Phil Towns, we're going to put that in the show notes. Eric helps market him, but his stuff is really, really good. And previously working for Warren Buffett, when I met Phil and knew that he was following some of his principles, he does it in such a practical, hands-on way.
Amazing.
So kudos that you guys are working together. But go ahead with your story. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So big pivot there, of course, was, okay, we've been sending roughly 300, butts and seats into either Atlanta or a couple times a year in San Diego, and they'd go for an amazing 3-day experience. We played around with some live streams in the past, and it was okay, but it was really focused on, it was really the event was there to cater to the people there live with the interactions and the coaches. And then COVID hit, and the panic call came from Phil. He says, all right, Eric, it's your time to shine. You and the team, we have no choice. We got to go digital here. How do we get this event to go online? And, without missing a beat and without losing any momentum of having a monthly event, we quickly pivoted and said, all right, well, the world's online now. Let's make this an incredible virtual event experience. And what does that mean with interactions and coaches and all that? And you had to evolve quickly. And you look back over the last 2 years, and there's countless stories of those that were able to take advantage of evolve quickly to the Zoom world and virtual events and all that, certainly did really well. And so, just being able to watch the trends, what's going on, it all goes back to who is your consumer? Do you really understand your consumer? How are they consuming? Where are they at? And how do you meet them there?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you were one of the startup entrepreneurs that you were, let's say when you were back in your 20s and you had a limited budget and you were putting, let's say like when you go to Vegas and you only have an X amount of dollars and you're putting a few chips on the table on a certain number, you mentioned YouTube. Is there 2 or 3 areas that if you only have limited dollars as a small entrepreneur, and I want to ask the same question about larger companies that have big budgets, but let's think about now of a smaller entrepreneur, they are like, strap and bootstrap kind of company. And they're going, okay, we've got to get some more lead gen coming in, or not so much on the brand, but I'm asking about lead gen. Where would you advise them to take some of that money and strategically place it in the right way with the right person, or in the right way in utilizing online marketing? In what fashion would you suggest, as a blanket statement? I know it's specific to each person and each brand, but if you have any general ideas on that.
Yeah. So again, so first I go back to, and everything we talk about is our Brandetize method: brand, build, monetize. So first you got to understand your brand, your messaging, your avatar. Do your research on that. Build your assets. Having your landing page, your funnel, your website done, and then ultimately monetize, drive traffic. Now, I think a lot of people want to jump into monetize right away because that's where the money comes in. But I always encourage people, especially if you're bootstrapping and you're not spending money, start by focusing on those first two areas. And a lot of people skip over number one fairly quickly. They just want to go rush out there. Well, you're going to be wasting a lot of time in the back end. So step one is really spend the time understanding who you are, what's your message. And so often, Steve, I find people that they'll have their website up and I'll say, well, let's just have a conversation. What is it you do? Tell me about it. And they'll talk to you and I'll say, well, let's go look at your website. It doesn't say anything what you just told me. It's completely different. And we got to get your message down to understand what you are. And I also really encourage people to spend the time to go research the competition once they understand it, because rather than try to reinvent the wheel, who can we look at and model and says, okay, I like what these 2-3 people are doing, and I want to take this part of this person, this part of this person, and that's where I want to start with, and really craft my message and get it going. And then ultimately, I love, if you're bootstrapping, I love the idea of just going out there and building content, but I would take a step back, and I always assess and say, and I've learned a lot through culture and building teams, is understanding your genius. What are you passionate about? What do you hate to do? And if you can really look into yourself and say, I love these things, I don't like these things. If I hate writing and I hate doing content, and you told me to go do a bunch of videos and do podcasts, I'd say, okay, but I guarantee you I'm going to take forever to get there, right? Because it's not my comfort zone. So what I would do is I encourage you to say, okay, understand what you don't like to do, and how do you motivate somebody to go do it? Can you find a family member, cousin, friend, intern? If you have $0, intern, get somebody experience, sell them the dream, get them expired, tell this is experience for anybody, and go bootstrap and have them do the things you don't like to do, and you do the things you love to do, and start to figure that out. So, I can dig a little bit deeper, but I kind of just stop there for a second on
that's great. Well, and would you have that same, so let's say that same question geared though, let's say I'm not a bootstrapping company. Let's say I'm an established larger company. I've had some success. We're profitable. We've continued to scale. We continue to grow, but I'm being a little bit too cautious with some of my expenditures in investing in marketing, and I'm doing it in a kind of an older traditional way. If I'm a company that's trying to be most current today with today's buyers, with today's interacting, whether it's the TikTok of the world or email market, where would you encourage a larger business to make sure they're doing self-assessment on their marketing dollars right now, if they do have larger budgets, to maybe refocus some of those dollars in some areas that you're seeing more success in return on either leads or brand, one, or whichever one pops in your head first?
Yeah. So in those situations when we have clients that have a little more budget come to us, again, I say let's look at the brand build, the brand build, monetize, Brandetize method. Where are the big holes and the big gaps in your business? And often what we do in those cases is we actually start off with a strategic blueprint where I say, all right, I'm going to get my subject matter experts across all channels to do a deep dive in your business. And my job is to be the CMO for you. Let's say, Steve, you're coming to me on. My job is to become the CMO, and we're going to look holistically at the business, and we have to get under the hood, because I'm not going to give you the right answer if I just looked at your business in 2 minutes. That's not fair for me to tell you. I got to do some of my own research. So with clients that have budget, I'd say take a step back, find somebody that you trust, that you think is smart, and have them really doing a diagnostic assessment of everything going on. Because therefore, you might find that there's some low-hanging fruit right in front of you that you're just missing. Or like you mentioned, maybe you're not going down a channel that's really hot right now, that we see opportunities to go do that. So then it's like, okay, here's the entire playbook. If this were my company, if I bought your business, here's what I would do tomorrow with a budget of X thousands of dollars. And that's typically the way we approach things. So if you're coming to me with that, I would go look for somebody that can help you make that assessment. Because, and Brian obviously talks about this too, if you're not doing proper strategic planning and taking a step back, you're oftentimes just, pissing money away in the long run and moving down the wrong path. So I would start there.
Well, that's awesome. Well, and you can get some of this advice from Brandetize. They don't take on everybody, but they do definitely assess and help on that front. So what the Brandetize website, brandetize.com, brandetize.com. You can learn more about them. We're going to have one more segment. We will also have that website for Eric's company in the show notes, but we're going to come back because I didn't have time in this segment to get deeper into company culture, because not only do you help build company culture in your own company, but part of, I understand what you do when you're helping brands be brands is to do it internally and externally, because of that kind of, mirroring yourself as a company. So I'd like to come back and talk with you more about that. And we're going to get a little bit into the more about your family stuff, also personal legend, and some more finishing up the segment about spiritual intelligence. So please, everybody, listen back in with Mr. Eric Berman of Brandetize. We will be right back from the Alchemy of Business show in just a few moments. Hello, and welcome back to the Alchemy of Business show. I'm host Steve Rodgers, and I have my guest, Mr. Eric Berman, who's the CEO, founder of Brandetize. And we were talking about where to spend your marketing dollars before you, blow all your money if you're a new bootstrap startup, or if you're a big company and you've got marketing dollars. But basically, Eric, you were talking about, it really is about assessment, really assessing where you're at. So I know that you have some real expertise in that, because before people start spending $1 or you start spending $1 of time or energy to help people grow, let's talk about this assessment thing. What is some of the processes you take your people through if you are saying, where are you at now? Let's assess that. And how does your company do that? So I know you have some different tools and some different processes in which you help individuals or companies go through this process. So let's take a few minutes and talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, to assess, I mean, really, it's a good interactive conversation with our clients, or anybody doing this, and you just want to find somebody who's good at that area. I mean, but first, from a macro perspective, are we doing the right strategy? And ultimately, once you understand, what the strategy should be, like, should I be working more in my messaging? Should I be going out there and generating leads or building content? What makes sense? But having a subject matter expert across channels based on that strategy. So the strategy is, hey, you should be doing paid right now. Let's go out there and just test the waters. And it's different for different people. Of course, if you're a coach or a thought leader, you want to focus on more content. If you are I have a widget to sell, let's just go MVP, minimum viable product. Let's get a landing page up there, test some ads, and quickly, get an assessment on that side. Is, how do I get my ads working, right? The messaging in my ads, landing page, getting somebody who can help assess how I'm doing my ad copy, things of that nature, and how I'm running up ads, what platform, do I go Facebook, Instagram, TikTok now, all that kind of stuff. So I think, surrounding yourself with smart people to help make sure you're making some of these proper decisions. You can always get one or two couple opinions as well. And then you go.
And then internally, if someone wanted to reach out to your company and get an assessment, you have a way that people could reach out to you or a specialist and start that conversation. And you also, I believe, have a digital course that kind of helps people get started on some questioning as well. So let's talk about that as well for the slide here, Eric. Noel, if you'll pop those up while Eric's talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, you could just essentially go into there's some resources in there to get some free digital marketing training, what we like to do. And there's also, I'm teaching you marketing strategy, right? We're putting up blogs and content of learnings that also brings us leads, but it's also to showcase some of the work we do. So for people just wanting to learn, we're happy to teach. We want people to be successful. We want to make a positive impact. So if we could give you a tool or a tip that's going to help you grow your business, fantastic. I mean, these are all tried techniques that have worked. We're on the cutting edge doing things. So we just put it up there. Oftentimes when my team does presentations, we just put them in there so everybody can enjoy whatever it is. And this slide here, you can see about Instagram or social media trends, and you could just hop in there and find different categories. We also have, you could just, shoot us a note, and we're happy to talk to you and see if there's something there that can help answer your questions.
Great. And for those of you that aren't seeing that slide because you're on audio and your earphone somewhere, we'll have these links in the show notes for brandetize.com, and where you can see these free digital marketing trainings, or you can have their contact page to reach out to them. So let's go back to what I was talking about earlier in culture, and I've glossed over that a couple of times, but I want to come back to it because it's so important. So on slide 4 here, Noel, we've got this was a master class you did, I think, Eric, but it's also a part of the way you live. I know that building your business over the years, it's been really important for you to build culture and to have a mission of making positive impact in the world. So how are you yourself as an entrepreneur and a CEO, and how are you advising others that are looking to advertise their shiny signal of what they do, making sure that they walk their talk internally and externally of what their culture might be?
Yeah, and culture is such an interesting, word. What is culture? I mean, you define that. There's so many different, and you get so many different answers on what does that mean within companies. I mean, what I do know, and I found this, and I should say one of my first big experience with that company I told you about. Fortunately, the person, my mentor, who was the CEO, that really taught me a lot about culture and understanding the importance of it and how tangible it really is, and how to take care of your team. And so there's a lot into that. I mean, starting with the old discussion about mission statement and core values and what does that mean, but it's really leaning into that. It's having everybody part of that, and not just sticking on a wall, but is what are you doing throughout the year to integrate that into your nomenclature, into your discussions. Certainly we have our annual retreats and we revisit those. We actually have our teams rank how we're doing on each of our core values and our culture, in our mission statement. And do we need to pivot it? Do we need to change it? So always looking at it. We'll do even things every week where when we're high-fiving each other, we actually do hashtags to which core value people are doing within that high five to continue to talk about how we're all into this. And when everybody has the right to say that if we're going off of our mission or core values, they call it out, and it's almost like rewarded for calling it out. So that's how you take an idea and integrate it more, and doing stuff like that. And then I can get into all sorts of areas of culture, but it's about, creating an environment that people really feel they want to work at. So much, especially the generation now. We all be ignorant to think that people aren't getting recruited on LinkedIn or other places often. And why is your employee going to stay at your company? And what's going to get them to, there's the money. Certainly people say, well, I pay them well. Well, that's fine. But somebody else is going to pay them 5% better fairly soon. But why your employee will stay is they're getting so much more out of the company. It's not just about the money. And how do you build a culture to foster that? So a lot of it's just, creating experiences. I mean, what people want now, and understanding and really listening and having a mechanism for feedback. This all goes into our culture. How do you get people to feel comfortable being heard, voicing their concerns, having a response to that, thanking them for voicing their concerns, and taking action on their concerns? That's what people want to see. Like, wow, you actually listened to me. I can't believe you actually heard my idea. Right. I go for one-on-one walks with my people and rotate that. Like, I want to dig in. How you doing? Oh my God, the CEO took the time out of the day to talk to me. What a cool experience. I'm like, it doesn't seem like a little big thing, but it really is. Creating opportunities for, recognition constantly, and how are people, getting recognized, opportunities for people to learn and grow, opportunities for people, back to our mission, to make an impact. If somebody is just a worker bee behind the desk, they may get bored of that fairly soon. How do you give them a chance to make an impact? How do you really listen to what it is they want to achieve in their career? And how do you show them their career path to getting those things, and how they can achieve that in your company? Or if they can't achieve it in your company, how do you help them find another company where they can achieve their career goals? And because you care about them. So, I can go on and on, but I know we're limited on time. So I'm just giving you a little taste.
I love that. And it is right in alignment with exactly how I think and how I teach and how I work with my own clients, and how I hoped that I was running my own companies when I ran them. My last book that I just finished, The Iggy Principles, talks about inviting good in versus edging good out, or if you want to use the word God or grace, inviting it in. So what you're doing, and I talk about in the book as well, incorporating some of these things into your business practices when you're building culture, when you're building connectivity with people, the importance of forgiveness, the importance of gratitude, the importance of paying it forward, the importance of mentorship. So these Iggy principles that I talk about very much tie into what you're talking about in branding and culture. And it is the little things that you do with heart and soul that make the biggest impact. So you're right. We could do a whole show on this, and maybe I'll have you back on doing a whole workshop on this particular topic, because it's so important. So I hate to gloss over it, but we had so many things to talk with you about. I do want to shift and have a little segment that we do, and then I want to wrap up with some spiritual discussion if we could. So we have a segment that we do called, you were talking about marketing earlier, in social media and branding, but also Instagram is a way we can express ourselves, and imaging for our own fun that we do in the world. So we do a segment called Instantly Interesting Instagram. And there's just 3 little top rules or topics we have. We basically go in and we take a quick dive on some of your photos on your Instagram feed. And then we also make sure that we don't really have any context around it. When we pull them up without context, we want you to share that with us. Then you're just going to tell us when I describe the photo, if people aren't seeing it, what's happening in that photo. We do it like a lightning round. So it's kind of a speed 15 to 30 seconds of each one at the most. And then we'll buzz through. And then we're going to wrap up with some more talk about heart and spirit. So you game to play?
Uh-oh, I'm ready.
Okay. So welcome to Instantly Interesting Instagram. So this looks like some kind of a experience that is, oh man, this looks like, I don't know if you are, I don't know what you're doing here, but it looks scary.
Well, I love traveling. I'm a world traveler, and this is in actually New Zealand. And I was doing, I think it's the second longest bungee it's called Nevis. And so I'm bungeeing into and I was scared S-less. You know, I couldn't believe I had to get pushed over. It was just crazy. I might have been taking something as well to help the ease the stress, just to get me through that.
I was like, okay, he's not skydiving there. I think that might be bungee jumping, but I mean, that is like going into this cavernous thing. Oh, your heart probably was just like, stop. I remember when I jumped out of a plane once, it was like that same thing. Okay, here's another one that says winner's bar here. You've got a group of people with a bunch of trophies and drinks in their hands. So it looks like you're celebrating something.
That's right. Well, if you look above that, you can see the horses. And
oh, that's right. I meant to talk about horses. Dang it. Okay.
Yeah. Tell us as a fun sort of side thing. You know, I'm in a horse racing syndicate, and I've learned some goods and bads in there, and actually how to do well in this horse racing syndicate. And here our group is celebrating a huge stakes win. And we're in the winners bar. They take you up into a little area when you win a stakes race, they give you champagne and all sorts of drinks, and you get to celebrate. So,
well, for those of you can't see this picture, this looks like some happy people, and you've got the TV screens in the back with the horses running around and the big sign that says winners bar. So that was a good day. I'm assuming you had a few days that didn't look as happy as that with some of your horse betting, but maybe not.
Yeah, you tend to lose more than you win, but when you win the good ones, some of the big ones,
makes it all worth it, right? Okay, Here is, I know you have, it looks like you have a couple babies that you like now. So now you have your real baby, and now you have these 2 other babies. These are little pooches that Eric has, 2 different, I don't know if that's
the same. It's the same dog.
Pooch.
Same dog.
Okay.
Same dog, different angle and lighting. Yeah, that's Stanley. He's a Frenchton, half French, half Boston Terrier. So a French Bulldog Boston Terrier mix. And he's been my little right arm guy for a while. And so he hangs out. He likes when Dad gets to work at home more. So he's pretty happy now.
I bet it looked almost like you had the younger version and the older version of the dog, but I see exactly that different lighting. Cool. Yeah. A man and woman's best friend. Well, we're going to jump from jumping off the photos and jump back into our last segment because we're running out of time here. But I want to ask you about, you've been kind of weaving in this since the very beginning of our talk about now being a father and a husband and doing stuff for your family and having purpose. And then your mission statement you have about making a positive impact in the world. So I want to ask you about, in your own definition of what you might determine as spirituality or the spiritual essence, do you have a definition of spirituality? And now that you have a daughter and a family, are you incorporating your own sense of spirituality in a more impactful way than you might have, say, a year or 2 ago?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the spirituality for me, a lot of it's always been about, certainly believing to some degree in a higher power, but to me, a lot of it's about believing in energy and how we're all connected, and really, what comes around goes around, and how do you go out there to help give first and give to others and be there for others, and certainly in this world, it's all about this amazing new thing that's in this world now, and how do I be there for her and connect with her. Everything I do now has a different purpose, and really being there for others, being there for my wife who's doing, God bless her, does the amazing work, a lot more work than I do by a mile, and support her and how hard it is, in the newfound respect for what mothers go through. And so I think just being able, how we're all connected, and you look at what's going on in this world even right now, and just some of the negative, and how do we go out there to help others and stay positive, and what can we do to help others and reach out, and what is our place in that, and certainly everybody chipping in to a small degree can help really make a good cause happen.
Well, and you do that in so many ways, and we are coming to an end here, but I know you do that through masterminds that you do that through workshops, you do that through your employees internally and with your messaging, the way you're advising people to message their products or their services or their brands in the marketplace. I know you're focused on that. So I applaud you on taking your talents and your skills and redefining what they are and evolving and growing with those. And in the Brandetize world of marketing advertising, you've definitely dug much deeper than that, of making a major impact in the world. So I want to thank you very much for being on the show and for taking your goodness and your talents out in the world of making it a better place. So thank you for being on the show. Do you have any closing thoughts or words for the listeners? We're going to make sure that you've got Eric's Instagram and his Facebook and LinkedIn and everything, and his website will be in the show notes. You can easily connect with him and his company. He is a great guy. He really has a big heart, massive amounts of talent, and very, very well connected, and really can help people in a lot of different ways. So reach out to Eric. But Eric, any closing thoughts for the audience?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I know we didn't cover this, but I'll just go by my favorite saying that I got from Brian Tracy, and it's something I would live by, which is, I am responsible. And I think it's something I would share with everybody as you're in your journey, whatever it is, as a father, as an entrepreneur, as an employee, whatever you're out there. I think to the extent you really understand and say that to yourself and look at every situation and not point the finger, not look around and say, what could I have done through this experience? What could I have done better? And you also are responsible for the way you act under certain situations, because you can't change the past. So I am responsible. I love it. I live by it. I share that with everybody, and it'll hopefully help everybody along their own journeys. And I wish everybody the most success.
Thank you very much. And thank you, everyone, for listening in on the Alchemy of Business show and listening in with Mr. Eric Berman of Brandetize. We will be back again on the next week's show. And thank you for everyone being here today. Have a great day and make it an awesome rest of your week.
And that concludes this episode of The Alchemy of Business with your host, Steve Rodgers. If you found value in today's broadcast, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing with friends, and leaving a review. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next Thursday for another episode. Be blessed and see you soon.